All right. Hey, everyone. This is Faye from Face World Media. With me here today, I have a very dear friend, Tammy Gooler Loeb, who just released a new book today. Boom, right on the screen. And this is Work from the Inside Out, which is really her brand as well. And today we're going to be discussing the publishing process, but more specifically during the pandemic, the past couple of years, it's been so hard for everyone, especially career wise, spiritually, professionally, spiritually, financially. So today we're really going to cover, break through the 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you, nobody else but you. And I'm just really excited to have Tammy join me. I feel like this conversation is like long overdue. I've
Oh,
witnessed you growing as an author, and I know this is not going to be the only book you write. So whoever's watching right now, wherever you are, leave us any comments that you have struggling with your careers, and I'm going to pitch that to Tammy. So Tammy, you don't have to worry about it. But welcome, Tammy. What a day! It's the launch
oh,
of your book.
thank you, Faye. And I am so excited to be here with you because you have been on this journey with me through starting the podcast, through writing the book, and it just makes perfect sense that we are here together. I wish we were in the same room together, but it's as close as we can get, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'm like gonna swap you so you're on the more important side. Oh, it's incredible. I mean, for people who don't know like what went through, I mean, I got to witness iterations of the cover, but
Yeah.
that's the least of it, right? Like there's so much content planning. Writing is this like creative muscles that you need a lot
Yeah.
of. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's true. As I'm talking to people and reflecting on it, there are so many moving parts, and the writing has been incredible. The writing
Mhm.
was actually a lot of fun,
Mhm.
and it went through several iterations, as people have probably heard when people talk about this. But the creative process was something that was really new to me in some ways. I've done a
Mhm.
lot of writing over the years and even had jobs in the past where writing was a big part of my work. But
Mhm.
this was very a very different experience, and it was kind of magical in some ways. There were mornings when I would wake up with ideas in my head. I
Mm.
actually woke up one morning with ideas in my head for an outline for a second book,
Mhm.
and so that actually is tucked away somewhere. I'm not looking at it right now, but I do have some ideas. But it's just it's so interesting. It really it the whole creative process has been so interesting, and now I'm just deeply immersed in the publishing. So
Mm.
it's never dreamed I'd be doing all of this. So
Yeah, like I said, this is not gonna be your first and only book, and I think just thinking about that, probably we talked about it as part of our mastermind group, and but you had
yeah,
to make a decision, and a lot of people out there, even myself included, guilty as charged, that I had been marinating all various ideas, like what is the best one, the one, and what
yeah,
Jenny, right? Like Jenny, let's just throw this question in front of
yeah.
our screen. Why did you decide to write this book? Why now?
Why now? Well, I've been thinking about this for a long time, actually, and really, really kind of marinating on it, almost like a slow cooker. And then a few years ago, I was sitting around with a few colleagues in our recognized expert community, and literally just blurted it out and said, "I'm going to write a book next year." And so I guess it was one of those. It felt a little impulsive, but it really was on my mind. It was next on my mind because I wanted to start creating more content, and this is,
Mhm.
as you said it in the introduction, this really is at the heart of my work. So
Mhm.
it was waiting to happen. So why now? Well, the why now keeps changing a little bit, especially now that we've got this whole time of the great resignation going on.
Mhm.
The book, I think, is even going to be more helpful to people than I ever imagined. So, but I've been deciding to write this book for a long time, and now it's just seems even more relevant than ever. So I'm tickled that I'm able to put this out there.
For sure, for sure. And there's so much to tease out. Funny enough, Tammy, my colleagues, my friends, and I have been having these conversations on a regular basis. And for people who are watching right now, we're going to get into these 9 common areas. Kind of, I feel like those are blockers, and those are things that could, really could be very well managed before we freak out. And um, that can be doubted with. So what I'm going to do is kind of go into these areas one at a time, because I think it's such an opportunity. Just confront these fears and
Yeah.
to realize that you have an opportunity at your current job, whether you
Yeah.
are a full-time or freelancer, to be able to overcome that and live a better life. So
Yeah.
Tammy,
Yeah.
shall we jump in?
So I started the book off with this particular topic, fear, friend or foe, because really fear actually runs through the entire book. And I don't mean to scare people off, like, the book's all about fear. But I think that fear is at the root of a lot of the things that hold us back from taking some steps to change things in our lives, even if it's something that we really want. I think sometimes we'd rather deal with the devil we know than the devil we don't know.
Mhm,
People are often afraid of the unknown. So, but I also call it friend or foe, because sometimes, even though we're afraid of something, it could be something we really want. And so sometimes that feeling of fear, it's more this sort of anxious anticipation.
mhm,
It's that, um, something that you're going to do anyway. So it's that fear, that sense of fear and excitement, actually.
mhm,
So fear can be both a friend and a foe. It can get in your way. It can paralyze you. It can really get you to you can talk yourself out of anything from a place of fear. But at the same time, you can also use it as sort of nervous energy to move forward. And of course, I encourage people to really stare it in the face and move forward, because usually fear is the kind of voice in our heads that is really trying to talk us out of something that we really want. I'm not talking about the kind of fear like, yeah, go ahead and cross the street in front of that car that's moving. I'm not talking about that. It's more the kind of thing where there are, some voices in your head that are saying, what if this, what if that happens? Maybe I shouldn't try this or that because, something might go wrong, or I don't want to fail.
mhm,
People who are afraid of failure, or really, when we say that, we're saying, I'm afraid of learning, because
mhm.
that's really what failure is about. When you make a mistake or something doesn't go the way you expected it to, well, guess what? Most of life goes not the way we expected it to. So that's how we learn.
Yeah, it's very revealing. Now, as I'm approaching my late 30s, I notice that there's certain things we're so accustomed to that, I remember in my early 20s, having some thousands of dollars you feel like, oh, there's a cushion. I get to do everything. Now
Yeah.
you have 3 times, 10 times that.
Yeah.
You feel very uneasy
Yeah.
because someone else is, seem to be doing better, making more. They seem to know what,
Hmm.
you know, they seem to have a clue what this life has to offer, but not everybody does. And another one I kind of want to hop into
Yeah.
that we've been talking about, and
Hmm.
I appreciate you, Tammy. I know that a lot of these interviews tend to turn into a love fest, but I really do, because what's really true about the essence of our relationship is that, number one, it's so funny. You're so open and honest and comfortable with your age. And I see you as a young person, period.
Thank you. Thank
Because
you.
you're vibrant, you're playful, and you're optimistic. And that, to me, as a coach, as an executive coach or otherwise, it's so important. That the one thing that you instilled in me, it's never too late. So
That's
for
right.
anyone, right, who's watching this, it's not too late if you're gonna need to start another job,
That's
another
right.
career. You need to become a freelancer. You need to start your own company. Can we talk about that? It's never too
I
late.
love talking about this, Faye. First of all, I always tease you, I'm old enough to be almost be your mother, if not your much older sister, right?
My
But
mother is older, for everybody's record, yeah.
but really, I love coaching. I was not a coach my whole career. I
Mhm,
started coaching when I was 40, and I've been coaching over 20 years. So you do the math. Okay.
Mhm.
So in the book, though, I highlight 3 stories, all people who started new careers age 40 plus. One of the people I highlight in the book started a new career, a real career pivot at age 58.
Mhm.
Another story I tell is a story of one of my favorite cousins who was a teacher and a guidance counselor and then went back and went to law school at the age of 50 and became a lawyer. So, but I hear, people say, "Oh, I don't want to start all over again." Or I don't want to take a step back in salary, or I don't want to pay for school. And I always say to them, listen, then don't do
Mhm.
it if you don't want to do it. But I
Mhm.
also say, then if you don't want to do that, think about what is it about that thing that tempts you or that appeals to you that maybe you could incorporate in your life.
Mhm.
Or if you don't want to spend the money on school, what is there something else that you can do that might feed your soul in some way. But don't just do this all or nothing kind of thinking. I'm just too old, I can't do it,
Mhm.
because that's not true. You can do it. You're choosing not to.
Very true. And questions are hopping in. I'm going to respect
Right.
people's comments and questions. I know you can
Sure.
ask them.
Yeah.
Um, can you share an example or two that might help someone to feel like it might be too late for them? How do they change their mindset? How do they make that leap
Mm,
forward?
yeah. Well, I think one example might be that, let's say they want, first of all, it's like how many psychiatrists does it take to get, someone to change a light bulb? It only takes one, but they have to want to change, right?
Mhm.
Well, they have to want to be open to it. So the first thing is that if if someone's picked up my book and they're reading that chapter and they are, let's say, 40 plus, 45 plus, and they were thinking it was too late, now they're open to the idea. That's the first step, right? Is just being open to what's possible.
Mhm.
And then I would say, um, start talking to people, start looking at other examples. First of all, read my book, right?
Yeah,
And then
that's right.
or call me. I'll give you lots of other examples of people that I've either worked with or know of who've done
Mhm.
this. I once helped a woman 70 years old get a full-time job. So, I think that it's important to kind of unpack what are the things that you feel are making it too late for you? What are the things that you're unwilling to do? What are the things that you might be willing to compromise on or be
Mhm.
flexible on? What are you telling yourself is
Mhm.
impossible? And
Mhm.
then if those are things that you're still choosing not to do, that's a choice you're making. But if you're telling yourself, I can't because of one thing or another that isn't really true, you have to have that conversation with yourself. But I think it's really an important thing is to just take a couple of steps back and look at what are the actual reasons you're giving yourself for not doing something, and ask yourself how badly you want it.
Mhm.
you know um, I'm not trying to say that everybody who has a desire to do something should absolutely do it. I think the other scenario that I paint to some people is to say, you know if you can imagine yourself, this is a little morbid, but if you can imagine yourself on your deathbed, and you say to yourself, you know what, I would regret it if I didn't at least try
Mm.
something along these lines. There's your answer.
Mhm. For sure. Love this. This is a very juicy conversations, and, here's a very, honest excuse I've seen many
Mhm,
times, and I work with clients who,
mhm.
especially when they transition from full-time to freelance,
Yeah,
they're so much happier, but, they walk into that domain with a lot of responsibilities,
yeah.
including folks I know who is the only source of income for the
Mhm.
family, having
Yep.
kids in college or
Yeah.
getting into college.
Mhm.
Um, Frankly, I had that fear too. I remember as freelancing, where does health insurance come from? And it's very doable. For
Yeah.
you guys who have questions for health insurance, please do ask briefly here. And but there are a lot of things that can be figured out. And I also think especially for women, I constantly hear like, oh, wait until my kids go to college, until they graduate, until my husbands are comfortable, everyone else is okay, then I will do this.
Right,
So,
right. So this is a little bit of a trickier one, though. And I think you just pointed out some of the factors that do hold people back. And so I think that, there is a fear underlying this, a fear. Usually it's tied somehow to finances or
mhm,
just a sense of responsibility and obligation that, I couldn't possibly start something new now, or I don't have the time because all these other people need me. And I think that you really have to, again, take a step back and really look at your life and ask yourself, is this really, are these things all taking over my life to the extent that I really can't even dip a toe in the water? The stories that I highlight in the book in this chapter, the two
mhm,
people that I focus on, they spent years. They were both working parents. One of them was a single parent, actually, and they both spent years making their, I'll call it their dream job. And I don't always like to use that term because I don't believe that you have to find your dream job or your passion to be happy.
mhm,
But they both spent years working on that before they actually got to where they wanted to go. So what I would say to people if they think they have too many responsibilities is I am not, me, myself, and I am not suggesting that you just drop everything,
mhm,
and shirk all your responsibilities and go out and do whatever you want to do. It's not an all or nothing kind of
mhm,
equation. I would say come up with a plan.
mhm,
Start to plan for it and work your way toward it. But if you're just telling yourself it's not possible and then not even, you know, at least putting it in your vision, then I think you're shortchanging yourself. So
mhm,
that's really what this chapter is about. It's about taking that excuse, kicking it to the curb and starting to make a plan. And it may be a long-term plan, but
mm.
it's definitely possible.
I'm gonna just drop one of my personal questions as I'm seeing, 8, 10 people hop on at a time. I know you're not always a same 8 to 10 people. Do let us know, yes or no. Have you reimagined your career in the past 1 to 2 years? I hate to keep calling out the pandemic because I know that the pandemic has kind of accelerated a lot of thinking and growth
Yeah.
in a way, as traumatic as it has been for everyone. But this this behavior has surfaced long before the pandemic. So,
Yeah.
and I love your idea, Tammy, and all the examples in your book, just so relatable.
Mhm.
Having the plan is essential of,
Mhm.
for me, for instance, understanding my spending behavior,
Mhm.
what I need to be comfortable, be realistic.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes you actually find out that you need a lot less than you thought you did.
Mhm.
And it's funny, like I go through this, I talk to my close friends who are very smart, went to good schools to say, how much do you think you need for retirement or to live a
Mm.
comfortable life? I often hear the numbers $10 million. Often hear the number 5 to $10 million. And that's people's imagination. But knowing once you break down your costs, you will know that you probably need a lot less than that. And therefore you have more freedom. So
Mhm.
um and this, I love this part that this next topics, careers are not formed in
Mhm.
a straight line.
Mhm.
And I'm stealing all these chapter headings from Tammy's new book for
Right
anybody
out of
who's
the book.
curious.
Thank you.
Right out of the book.
Yeah. So this chapter is really about how do we build up assumptions and expectations in our heads about what we're supposed to do, right? So, a lot of us, not all, but a lot of us were raised to believe that we would grow up to become something
Mhm,
and we would follow a path. So, we might major in a particular discipline, or we might get our first job or our second job in a particular company or organization. And then we would go ahead and then go ahead and we would climb some kind of a ladder, and we would advance
mhm,
and we'd get promotions and bonuses and we would work our way up, and
mhm,
it's some kind of consistent linear path. Well, as many of you know now, the world is not working that way so much anymore. There are
Mhm.
layoffs all the time. There are mergers and acquisitions. Um, and then, and then people change their minds and want to do something different. We know that
Mhm.
most people have at least two careers in their lifetimes, many much more than that. So, um, it careers are not formed in a straight line. So I say to people, especially young people who are just starting out, don't think that you have to figure out right now what you want to do with the rest of your life. Figure out
Mhm.
what you want to do for the next couple of years and
Mhm.
work at that and grow your skills and give yourself a chance to just understand what it's like to be out in the world of work. Is I end up talking to a lot of um, college seniors or kids who've just gotten out of college, like friends of mine, their kids and things.
Mhm.
And because I don't really coach, emerging new kids get right out of school that much, but it's a shock when you first get out of school, and all of a sudden, even though you know it's coming, it's
Mhm.
still a shock to all of a sudden be in adult land. And yet there's this story that we've all grown up with, which is, well, I'm supposed to become this thing and then I'm supposed to follow this path. And
Mhm.
we call them career paths, don't we?
Mhm.
Right.
Mm.
Well,
Good
guess
beauty.
what? There are exits and there are all kinds of ways to go off the path. And that's okay. In fact, you should, I think.
Mm.
So
Love it. The fact that it's such a myth that career is a straight line,
it is.
and
Yeah.
how we're educated, there's a lot of unlearning what we're familiar with, what our parents, told us because they love
Yeah.
us so much. It's
Well,
really hard, and
yeah,
I
it
still
is hard.
unlearning.
Mhm. I mean,
Yeah.
my father had the same job his whole career for the most part. He had a couple of other jobs earlier in his life, but, he was the model of a straight line career, and, I think that was probably more the norm in his generation, but, and so I grew up with that, so it would make sense that as, baby boomers like myself would send that message to our kids, and
Mhm.
it's not wrong that people have done that. It's logical, but it's really not what's happening out there now. And that's why I think it's an important message to get out there so that people aren't still running with those assumptions and then
Mhm.
feeling bad. That's what happens is people then feel badly that they're changing their minds as if there's something wrong with them.
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm not following the path. What's wrong with me?" And there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, you're actually in the norm.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of feeling like an outsider. So Rusty just sent a great question. How do you talk to someone who was raised to follow a path, follow the
Yeah,
rules? What helps them
yeah.
to get nonlinear?
Well, I think, explaining to them that times have changed, that probably the rules of the road as they were taught were the rules of the road at a time when the role models in their lives, really those were the rules. And so there were a lot of well-intentioned people in your life who
Mhm,
gave you the kind of guidance that they thought was right for you. And they didn't know that the world was going to move in this direction. And so forgive them.
mhm,
They did what was right by you. And, you need to see. I mean, and you can even say, look around you. If you look at most of your friends or you look at most people around you, most people are not staying in the same role their
mm,
entire careers or the same functional area or the same industry even.
mhm,
So there's nothing wrong with changing gears. Some people get uncomfortable with that still anyway for other reasons. I've seen clients who really, really want to try something different, but then they get anxious about having to take a salary cut to try something new,
mhm,
and
mhm,
that poses some dilemmas for people. I understand that. But you have to find the right balance for yourself in terms of what is it that you're willing to be flexible on in terms of for the sake of finding a happier place for yourself with your career and your work.
mm. Yeah, there's a question. I feel like there's some questions rushing in. Hey, Michael, Brian, thanks for watching. Michael is also part of our group and just love
Yay.
learning from him. And question from Jenny: it seems like the themes in your book are timeless and also super relevant right now with what's going on in the work of work. So for people who are contemplating reading about the book, whether they should pick up the book or they should talk to you or work with someone like you, I mean,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that they should consider?
Well, I thank you for that, Jenny. I would agree with you totally. um, I tried to make it as timeless as possible. I do think that I almost was pleasantly surprised that as the book came out, that there was a lot of talk now about this great resignation and about more and more people are leaving their jobs. I still think there's a lot we need to understand about what the great resignation means. But I think one sort of general theme that seems to be coming up is that more and more people are less willing to follow the party line, so to speak. They are less willing to just do as they're told, come back to the office full time, for example, um, do your job this way or that way. And people are for one reason or another seem to be more comfortable walking away from a particular job and find something else they want to do. It
Mhm,
seems as though people are feeling freer to make choices about the work they do far more than I've ever seen before.
mhm,
So in that way, I think that a book like this can be helpful to them.
mhm,
Actually, especially at the end of each chapter, where I have reflective questions and guiding activities, which I think can help provoke the kind of thinking that people need to do in terms of thinking about what's next. So it's one thing to say, okay, I don't want this, I'm going to resign. It's another thing to say, what am I going toward?
mhm,
The other piece of the book that I think is vital to people who are leaving their jobs now, if they're leaving and not knowing what they're going next to, is the resources section of the book, which I really very carefully crafted to give people cutting edge information and resources that will tell them how do you look for a job in this day and age? Because, if the last time you looked for a job was even 10 years ago, 8 years ago,
mhm,
it's a very different world looking for work now, and you really need to know the strategies for doing that. So I provide some resources for that, and a whole world of other resources, um, so that people go in knowing what they're doing, because people think it's a matter of just looking online for jobs and submitting resumes.
mhm,
Not even close.
mhm. Mm.
So,
This is the next part we're transitioning into is
mhm,
intriguing, and I think it's
mhm,
very relevant to what we're
mhm,
talking about.
mhm,
Um, and it's a dilemma. Like people often just default to what they're good at, and
mhm,
and that's what they go into. And I love these kind of affirmations and these lovely comments. One from Cindy, for instance: it seems that many people are willing to ask for what they want and need. That's really refreshing. Frankly, I didn't see that earlier on
yeah,
in my career. And so,
yeah,
yes, the reflective questions are very helpful.
yeah,
And it is very different, even in the last 2 years. So, thank you,
mhm.
Cindy.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, this is another favorite topic of mine. Don't default to what you're good at, because, and again, this ties back in with probably some of the earlier narratives that we heard when we were little. Well-intentioned adults, giving us a pat on the back. Oh, you are so good at math.
Mm,
When you grow up, you should be an accountant or you should be an engineer. Look how good you are, with those Legos or whatever it is. Um, so there's sometimes very well-intentioned teachers, adults in your life who really encourage you. And in some ways it's very, very positive and a very good thing. I think sometimes it can go a little too far.
mm,
And depending on who you are and how impressionable you are, you might take that all the way through college and beyond. And so or maybe it even gets planted in subliminally. But um, what happens is, I think there's still an overriding message that comes across as, think about what you're good at and go in that direction.
Mhm.
And that's fine to some degree, but make sure that if you're good at it, that it's also something you actually enjoy
Mhm.
doing.
Mhm.
Because, the example that I give in the book and that I give almost everybody I speak with, especially clients, is, you know, I'm really good at cleaning toilets. And I hate cleaning toilets. And,
Mhm.
I love the fact that there are people out there who love to do cleaning activities. Maybe they don't like cleaning toilets, but
Mhm.
I use that as an example because I think fairly universally there's probably not a ton of people out there who enjoy that activity. Yet they might be really good at it. I'm really good at it. I just hate it. And
Mhm.
I don't like doing it. So I'm not going to choose to do that for my work, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, but I do come across a lot of people when they start to think about what their options are, when they are thinking about making a change, I'll hear the words out of their mouth, well, I could do this, I could do that. And it's sort of like in this hesitant voice. And it's much harder for them to come from what I call the inside out, where it's more about you know, where they really light up and they say, I want to do this. I want to do that. And that's what the key is to this chapter. It's actually the key to the whole book.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I see these funny comments and coming in. Like Mike O'Brien said, he's good at TikTok, which he really is, and it doesn't pay.
There you
And
go, Michael.
and
You are good at TikTok. I've seen you.
yeah, with the singing and the rapping, the lip syncing. I
He's
mean, it takes a
great.
lot of talents. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I can sidetrack so easily there, but I think the 5 and 6 are related, Tammy. I'm so glad we're bringing up these really tough conversations. And if you're watching this and or where you are, please share your questions, your reflections, and comments. As you can see, we're not annoyed by comments. We're here to help you out for the time we have. And to me, same thing. I was good at project management or product management. I was good, at least was told by clients and some colleagues. And I realized over time I didn't want to do that anymore,
Yeah.
even though everything on my resume says, okay, you're successful at it, you're being recommended. You can still see a lot of the LinkedIn recommendations, which
Yeah.
put me in this like a perpetual mode to want, oh, I have to do more. I have to keep seeking this career path because that's the only one I can get paid for. And I'm a responsible person, adult. But I realized the so called success, like you said, is not a destination. In fact, for us to explore something with or without fear, there's kind of that there's a pivot and there's that dip. Oh, the dip feels so
Mm.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
that you got to learn something before you're good at it, before you can
Mm.
claim success. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
let's chat.
Yeah. Well, and I think that people have different definitions individually what success means to them. Again, that's been presented to people what success means to them.
Mhm.
So, I think you have to decide for yourself, what does that mean to you? But I've heard, we hear phrases like, oh, they have arrived, they've arrived, at success,
Mhm.
when they've either won an award or they've gotten, a big bonus, they've arrived. And I think it's a more iterative process. People, will have a certain level of success in something that they're doing. And then they move on and they start doing something else and then they might have more success, but it's up to them. It's in the eye of the beholder how they hold on to that. But I think it's something that gets tied in with our professional lives in
Mhm.
ways that can put a lot of pressure on us to achieve something that isn't necessarily tied to our own value system. And
Mhm.
then we're working so hard toward this kind of arbitrary place of success, as if it's a place we have to arrive at. And I really wanted to dispel that.
Mm. And I love this topic, and as well as the one coming up. But for instance, the way I define success, as you've always asked me the question, Tammy, to define that for myself. So I think both of us are kind of similar in that way. Like we work late and we love sleeping in. So for me, the success is that I can sleep till 9 o'clock if I choose to, and I don't book any meetings before 11 a.m. my local
Hmm.
time. I know that sounds
Hmm.
ridiculous to a lot of people. And my other success, I looking back in 2009 and the 2 years before that, when my dad was hospitalized for cancer, end stage. I couldn't be there for him. I could only
Yeah.
go back to China like 2 weeks at a time, come back to a pile of work I couldn't really get done. And versus now, with my mom's, physical therapy, I work from home, I get to take her to do all these things. And,
Mhm.
to me, that is huge. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Oh,
agree. And that's your definition of success, to
mhm,
create a life that works for you. You get to
yeah.
do the work you love. You also get to be there for your family.
Yeah, for sure. And then I
Mm,
think, like, related to the next topic, like, this makes
mhm.
me laugh so much. And but I see that people really struggle to understand how
Yep.
networking works. And
Mhm.
I remember, especially going to these big conferences, Tammy, that you can see people approach you for so many different reasons.
Mhm.
They want to find out, like, how much money you make. Do you have a current opportunity right now? If not,
Yeah.
they don't even hand you a business card and they just walk away. But I want to, like, really get in there.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think that the model probably many years ago was you just network for a job, and then you're done. You go to your job and you go back to your life, so to speak. But I think of networking in a very, very different way. I think of it as, kind of a muscle or a habit that you develop. And it's really about developing relationships. And it's also about getting information. It's about learning about other people and what they're up to and understanding what's going on in the marketplace. It's not just about finding out where there are openings or jobs.
Mhm,
And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make, is they think they just need to be talking to people only in their industry or
mhm,
functional area and find out where the jobs are. And that's a very, very narrow approach. It also is probably not the most productive way to find out where there might be an opportunity. So I recommend that people just start looking for information and talk to everybody and anybody you can. Not to say that you have to talk to people all day long, but I suggest that anybody you talk to knows somebody else.
mhm,
And even though the person you're talking to might not be in your field, you don't know who they know. So I
mhm,
think it's always important to just have lots of different conversations, and you can talk about yourself, but show an interest in other people and find out who they know and find out what
mhm,
circles they travel in or what kind of work they're doing, and not just what they do, but what do they like about it? What do they like about their job, or what don't they like? What keeps them up at night, or what do they feel challenged by? Because when you listen to other people's stories and their lives, sometimes it sparks insights in your mind about
mhm,
what you might want to do, or it might trigger an idea for you. Also, when you're listening to somebody else that way, they are more likely to start asking you about you, and
mhm,
they're going to feel heard,
mhm,
and they're gonna remember that's going to make them wanna do more to help you down the road. So, I'm not saying you should listen to them so that they'll help you down the road, but I do think that it's more important, as Dale Carnegie said, to be interested, not interesting.
mm,
And
mhm,
I find that a lot of my clients, who are less comfortable with networking, uh, I tell them, "Don't make it about you, make it about them."
yeah,
They will ask you about you, but you can start off making it about them,
mm,
and eventually, you will have to tell them why you wanted to talk to them, and make it easy for them to help you. But just learn about other people and find out what's going on in the world.
yeah, isn't that revealing? Reframe and reset your career. I know who you are.
I know who
Totally
that is,
totally
and
agree.
he's up very late.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's about being curious, building strong relationships. Um, I like to be, like, overly transparent and honest on these live streams sometimes, because I notice that sometimes collision and then kind of the friction among people with the exact same career path. So, when we grew up, to say, "Hey, Faye, you like chocolate? Find your other friends." They're like, Yeah, eating chocolate together. It's an ice cream is amazing. But when it comes to careers, I notice the tendency of sometimes from my mom as an artist, people tend to say, I know other artists, you should totally talk to each other and hang out. It kind of makes sense. Or oh, you're a software developer. I know a software developer. You should
Yeah.
talk together. But you know what's funny is like people started to be very judgy and very critical of each other's work because they're kind of in this expert space, or they sometimes in a traditional career they even feel like in competition with each other.
Mm.
Whereas as an entrepreneur, which I have been for the past, really 6, 7 years, I notice like I look at my team, I look at Tammy as a career coach. Like I am not one. And when I get stuck, I know who I talk to would be Tammy.
Mhm.
And, other people on my team, Herman is a fantastic video strategist and
Mhm.
editor. Anna is a great content manager. Rose is the social media, expert. I don't have to. I don't rather prefer not to rely on myself and my own expertise, but instead I love talking to doctors and
Mhm.
authors like Tammy, and it's just so eye-opening and
Mhm.
you learn so much more and you create this ecosystem for you as
Yeah.
well. So not limited to people in your career for sure.
I totally agree with that, and I think it gives you another perspective, and it keeps you staying open and curious about what's going on, and I say those words, "open and curious," probably too many times a day, but it's I really believe in it. It's really important to just keep your options open and think about always think about things from another perspective before you start to narrow your options.
Mhm. For sure. And then now this is a very tricky area. And any one of you are watching this, I'm not qualified. Do I belong here? I hear the struggle all the time. I've felt that way earlier in my career. Like I'm just
Yep.
not good. I'm not good enough, especially if I
Mhm.
pivot in my career, even for my YouTube videos. Oh, am I qualified to talk about something else now that I've done 50 Zoom videos? Can I
Mm.
talk about Google Meet, Microsoft Teams? It's so silly. But
Yeah.
let's break it down, Tammy.
Yeah, yeah. So, I profile 2 women in this chapter who both started their careers without college degrees, and really, they were both pretty scrappy. They just both found themselves getting into organizations where the hiring manager was just liked their curiosity. They asked a lot of questions, and they were open and curious, and they stepped into roles where they literally didn't they literally were not qualified, and they got employed. So their examples are a bit extreme, but they're really fun to read about, I think. Um, but I think that the chapter is written, to give their examples as extremes to show just what is actually possible, because it is possible. But I also see a lot of times people will read job descriptions and they'll see, oh, we need, 6 to 10 years of experience, or we need you to know a certain, computer language or piece of software, or you need to know this or that. And I just find that people will walk away from a job description because there's 1 or 2 items in it that they don't qualify for.
Mm,
And I wanna say, don't do that,
mhm,
because a lot of employers draft job descriptions based on something they saw somewhere else, and sometimes they write things they don't even think twice
mhm,
about. They're not necessarily really care about some of those things. Some of those things are not top priorities.
mhm.
Sometimes they put things in by accident even. A lot of
Yeah.
job descriptions are not written all that carefully. So I say throw your hat in the ring, unless your experience is so dramatically, different from what they're looking for. But if you see a job that intrigues you, there is no harm in putting your best foot forward and trying to throw your hat in the ring. And when I say throw your hat in the ring, I don't mean just sending in a resume. I mean putting yourself through your paces to really become a viable candidate. And there are a lot of steps to that, which I'm not going to go into right now because that would be a whole nother session here. But there's a number of things that you really need to do. So, but I do think that people often will stop themselves from even learning more about a situation based on
Mhm.
reading a job description. and
It's
they shouldn't do that.
I've heard that over and over again. It's, with across different career paths, but in particular for developers, for
Mm,
technologists, because new language tools, systems are coming out on a regular basis, much faster than when I first
mhm,
entered into the tech world. So I've
mhm,
heard a lot of developers say that, oh, I don't qualify. There's one language I'm not familiar. It's just not my thing, not my stack.
mhm,
And
mhm.
but I love this question from Emma Loeb. Can you?
Emma Loeb,
Who's that?
one of
Uh,
my all-time favorite people in the whole world.
Probably the favorite person. Can you ever ask too many questions to get started in a new direction?
You know, I don't think so, and I don't think so at all, Emma Loeb. Um, I don't think you can. I think that, um, I guess if you ask them all to one person, it might get a little annoying, but it wouldn't be to me. You can ask me as many questions as you want. I think that the only way you're going to learn and figure out where you want to go is by asking questions and then listening for the answers. And then that will prompt more questions. So I would say, I could see where if it appears that you're asking a lot of questions to somebody and you're not really, hearing or listening the answers and you're just throwing questions around, yeah, that is too many. But I don't think that's the question here. I think it's, are you, if you're going to annoy someone, yeah, that's too much. But I don't think that's what you're asking. So by all means, ask away, and cast your net widely. Ask lots of different people, maybe even the same question, to get a variety of perspectives, and then you decide for yourself what that all means to you.
I love this question, Emma. And I realize that sometimes for me as a YouTuber, for me to start these new brand relationships, working on videos with different brands, I need to ask a lot of questions. But I think sometimes, like, the more questions you ask, the more familiar that you are with a structured approach.
Mhm.
So you can be strategic with your questions, is what
Mhm.
I'm getting at. So, for instance, around for me to ask a question towards the brand is really about choosing whether I want to work for them or not.
Yeah.
And right, there's a lot of reasons. Do they pay reasonably for a video to be produced? Do
Mhm.
they allow me to have creative control? They'll be like, we need to see every word, every script. The answer is yes. I don't work for those brands. And there's an affiliate piece, which is, as a creator, I recommend something I love. Do I get a cut? Because that pays in, that can play into if this deal is a good deal or not. Some
Mhm.
brands always pay on time, some brands don't. That
Mhm.
comes to net terms. I know that Emma has a lot of experience as well. Like how often, how, do they pay you? Is it
Mhm.
net 15, net 30? These things actually make a huge difference for an
Mhm.
individual, not so much
Mhm.
for the company.
Mhm.
So I love that. Reframe and reset. Great point. I feel like I need to share more lovely messages. Being enthusiastic, having a great attitude makes a huge difference. Thank you. We completely agree. And that leads to a last but most important part, I think, of our
Mhm.
conversation
Mhm.
about being
Mhm.
human.
Yeah, yeah. So, and of course, we've been living through this pandemic the last couple of years. We all know uncertainty is a fact of life. It was a fact of life long before the pandemic. I think it's just been staring us in the face that much more. But this chapter really does focus on some stories of people who had very sudden and very tragic um, events in their lives. And as a result, those events changed the course of how they thought about their careers. It didn't necessarily change their careers immediately. In fact, it didn't change their careers immediately for any one of them. I focus on three people, and but it is interesting how those various events did uh, impact the way they started to think about their careers and how they really wanted to make sure that what they did choose to do next had more meaning to them, honored their values more, and really enabled them to go forward in their lives in a way that really was far more from the inside out. no doubt about it.
Mm.
And so, I think that sometimes we have to just remind ourselves that life can change at any moment, and not to get, fatalistic about anything here, but when you start to think about things like that, or you read stories like this, it it should, I think it should make you stop and think, you know, am I really living the life I want to today? And if the answer is no, then what can I start doing today to start stepping into the life that I really want? And usually work has something to do with that.
Mm. Love it. Love this message about uncertainty. It's always gonna be there,
Yeah.
and we have to give ourselves a chance.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tammy, working on this book has been a huge endeavor, and I just wanna I feel like I witnessed this product as a work in progress for well over a year, and
2
you're
years I
2
worked on it.
years, that's why.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And
Uh-huh.
I really wanna encourage people to, check it out. Once again, it's in the description below. It's tammygoolerloeb.com/book, but I really want you to check out her executive coaching program. She works with corporations, she's a speaker, and, the book is in a very important part of it. And I love the idea of a book because it introduces you, your work to people, with a pretty low barrier to
Mhm.
entry.
Mhm.
Um, you can just pick it up. And today we just walk through these 9 different areas. And if you happen to discover this video wherever you are after the fact, please leave questions and comments because we might
Mhm.
be able to help you out, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, Tammy, that you want to talk about, like leave people with that we didn't get a chance to cover?
Um, I think the one parting thought I wanna leave with people is, if you are considering making a change, don't do it alone. Make sure that you have, a thinking partner, a coach, and I'm not trying to sell coaching here right now, but make sure that you have, either a small network of people, or people that you can bounce, ideas around with, because it's to do it alone, you're really limiting the view that you're taking, and I think we are each individually almost too close to ourselves to get the perspective we need to really make, I think, good, creative decisions about what we want to do when we're ready to make some sort of a change. The one area where you have to be a little bit alone with it is that inside out piece, because you have to listen to that voice within yourself. But once you're listening to that, that's the kind of conversation you can have with a trusted person and say, I keep thinking about this. It keeps coming back to me. You know, my I have this gut instinct about this, or this phrase keeps coming to me. Something that's just nagging at me. What do you think about it? Or, and maybe somebody who knows you well will say, you know what? I That doesn't surprise me that you've been thinking about that. I have a thought about that. And maybe they can shine a light on it in a way where maybe you haven't been able to make sense of it yet. And that's why I say, don't ever think you have to do this all alone, because you will really limit, the way that you go about it.
Mm, love it. And this part is so important. And, Tammy has been in conversations with numerous people whose stories are very relatable.
Mhm.
She's not just going after the world's top 1%. So, including people featured in her book, plus her lovely podcast, Work from the Inside
Mhm.
Out. Encourage you to check it out. And also, let's see. Cindy, thanks again for sticking to this live stream. Setting up your team is very solid tip to share those inner thoughts and help you spread your wings. You don't have to do it alone.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
this
right.
is so lovely. So many people
Yeah.
hopped on today and left questions. And
Yeah, this is
yeah,
great.
yay. All right, we're
Thank
going to take
you.
us offline now. Thank you so much for coming again. Tammy, don't go anywhere.
Okay.
And I will see you guys in a future live stream soon. Bye.